how many more, in the last days of the bloodbath on the beach in the Northeast. They claim that these photos that were taken from a UN helicopter after the bloodbath are fake. But these show and they prove that the Tamil people were destroyed in that area. There is nothing left. They now dig mass graves and conceal the evidence. They don't apologize for turning away the Mercy Mission, an independent ship that left London with more than 800 tons of food and medicine for the Tamil IDPs, and the government of Sri Lanka refused to let it dock. They don't apologize for refusing journalists or observers entry to the camps. What do they have to hide? Well, we know they have a lot to hide. They don't apologize for starving and keeping captive over 300,000 Tamil civilians who have done nothing wrong except to be born Tamil in the country of Sri Lanka. The children are disappearing from the camps. On June 14th, it was reported that more than 200 youths were abducted from the camp in Babunia. No whereabouts have been reported. Again, the similarity to how the Nazis killed the Jews is exactly the same. These are well thought out. The Tamils. This is genocide. They use the excuse to keep the Tamils in the concentration camps to weed out the terrorists. Are these old people, women and children, terrorists? The war against the LTTE is over militarily, and yet they still kill Tamil civilians. Many of these people own land, they had savings, they have relatives in other parts of the country and overseas. They're willing to help and get them out of the camps, but no one is allowed to rescue these people from these torture camps. When Rajapaksa speaks about his victory over the LTTE, he doesn't mention the hatred against the Tamils for years. In 1981, many of you remember, there was a heartbreaking burning of the Jaffna Library. This was cultural genocide. There have been 60 years of government-sponsored pogroms and anti-Tamil riots. Black July in 1980 was one of them. Today, Rajapaksa celebrates Tamil civilian massacres by building new Buddhist temples all over the country. New songs, posters, and newspaper articles hail him as a king. He pretends to be the warrior king who defeated the Tamils in the 2nd century BC. In psychiatry, we call that a paranoid delusion. Dangerous. Throughout history, it's always dangerous to have somebody in power who has a paranoid delusion. He recently announced that there would be no elections for 6 more years. This is Rajapaksa. He says it's Mahinda's magic. He's sawing a Tamil in half, and he says, military solution, there is blood on the floor. The international community is watching, and the Tamil has media censorship. And he says, believe me, it doesn't hurt him. Now Sri Lanka has neither human rights nor the Tamil people are being killed in Sri Lanka, but just as horrible is the Tamil identity being erased. There are 2 urgent issues. Tamils are being killed and starved, but the Tamil identity is being erased. The Tamil nation is trapped inside the Sinhala militaristic state. If the government of Sri Lanka wins, the Tamils the world over will lose a significant part of their heritage. Elam Tamil roots are in their homeland. We must not let them erase the Tamils by making them second-class citizens in the Sinhalese culture. Rajapaksa's goal is clear and simple. It's to destroy Tamil pride and break the backbone of the Tamil culture. He's making Tamils invisible. He's already said that the 300,000 Tamil hostages cannot vote. He's made them invisible. About the camps is killed. The Sri Lankan government is systematically dismantling the concept of a nation, both physically and mentally. Colonization, demerger of the North and the East are depriving Tamils of basic rights, and they're all part of that process. In addition, The Sri Lankan government is behind a conspiracy. This happened only the other day. They're behind a conspiracy that any international report now speaks about the civilians of Sri Lanka, not the Tamil civilians. Well, if you take the word Tamil off civilians, you erase the Tamils and you make them invisible. So we must get out there and fight this. We have to write letters and be visible. Tamils are not a minority in the country called Sri Lanka. They are the Tamil nation held hostage in silence. You know, I want to repeat that again because it's such an important concept. Minority in the country called Sri Lanka. They are the Tamil nation held hostage inside this fascist country. The Tamil culture and nation is at the risk of disappearing in Sri Lanka. If the government of Sri Lanka wins and erases the Tamil culture and nation of Sri Lanka, it will result in the Tamils, the world over, feeling this shock like an uprooted great tree that has been pulled out of the earth and left to die. We must not let this happen. You must not let this happen. Determination. We must be determined to turn the tide. The world has turned a blind eye to the genocide of the Tamils. In the words of Prabhaharan, he said, "You can wake up someone who is sleeping, but you cannot wake up someone who is pretending to be asleep." You see, that's the Tamil reaching out from the hole. The Sri Lankan army is pulling him back, and the world. We must force those pretending to be asleep to stop their murderous games. I often say the international community played politics with the Tamil people. In this war, China got a new port, another gem in the necklace that is surrounding India and making it tighter and tighter. Rajapaksa got his death machines from China. Pakistan got to make money, and the United States bought more Chinese financial credit with their silence. And the Tamils, they paid with their lives. Hardly fair. Hardly fair. Shame on the international community for pretending to be asleep. They never were asleep. The international community does not care. We have no friends in the United Nations. Last month at the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva, process, and they got a resolution passed that said, we will police our own inquiry into war crimes. Now think about that. That's like giving a kindergarten class over to a sex offender and saying, by the way, if there happen to be any sexual abuses in your classroom, just let us know. They made a mockery of world politics. Only Israel, at the World Health Organization meeting, demanded that the government of Sri Lanka be investigated for war crimes. And they... Yes, that's the good news that Israel put it out and demanded an inquiry. The bad news is that they were voted down unanimously. Sri Lanka has very important friends, which we need to be aware of. We must be determined in the face of the government of Sri Lanka's impunity, and they block any investigations of the camps. Charity organizations are not allowed to talk to the Tamils held prisoner in the concentration. Just drop the food and go, they're told. Just drop the food. In June, they blocked a Canadian government official, Bob Ray, from entering the country. They have covered up the massacre in the north with bulldozers, and they arrested the 3 heroic, courageous doctors I mentioned before. These are Tamil doctors that stayed behind in the war zone to take care of the wounded. Their reports that they sent out as often as they could bore witness to the slaughter of the Tamil civilians in the north each time they put out a report. They talked about the government shelling and the bombing and the artillery, but now the government has arrested them and are torturing them to change their testimony. Today is day 50 for the 3 doctors who are in government of Sri Lanka custody. Please, I beg of you, take a moment, go into the little room, there's a desk of pearl, and there's a petition to help free these heroic doctors. But one thing the government of Sri Lanka never counted on was all of us.